Hi, everyone. Welcome to Question Period Rewind. I'm Donna Skelly, Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. Get ready to travel back to 1987. That was a big year in the province since it was the first time we handed out the Order of Ontario. Kylie Minogue released her debut single, Locomotion, and Stephen King's Misery was first published. Now, let's see who was active in the House at that time.
Oral questions. Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Labour, and we should like to ask him some questions relating to what is yet another example of how the government seems to want to move from alleging to be the most open to the most secretive and whitewashing government extent. And I want to ask him if he agrees with some statements in this report which he has so warmly endorsed this afternoon. In the executive summary on page 3, in an attempt to blame everyone but the minister for the problems in the workplace, the report says, unfortunately, there's evidence that members of the labor movement have another agenda and are using occupational health and safety to achieve their objectives. And on page 8 of the report itself, it then blames the media, saying, quote, this balanced, objective interpretation of occupational health and safety issues by the press in Ontario has been lacking. Now, I wonder if the minister this afternoon should like to endorse this theory that the labor movement and the media are to blame for some of the problems. Do you endorse specifically those statements out of the report?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm just delighted to get a question on this subject from the Leader of the Opposition, who has apparently discovered health and safety issues. Mr. Speaker, if the Leader of the Opposition is asking me if I would endorse comments by Mr. McKenzie which seek to place blame, if I were to standing in my place want to place blame, I would want to place blame where it belongs. And that is on an administration that left the Ministry of Labor, not just the division, but the whole ministry in an abject mess. Now the reason.
Order.
The reason that I'm so glad that the Leader of the Opposition has asked me that question is I want to remind him that he was Treasurer of Ontario between July of 1983 and May of 1985. And thus he would have been responsible for the budgetary expenditure in fiscal 84-85. I just want to remind the House, Mr. Speaker, that in that year, the total expenditures for all government ministries went up. The total expenditures for all government ministries went up by 7.9%. Mr. Speaker, in that same year, the expenditure for the Ministry of Labor went down by 0.3%. What a sterling commitment to health and safety.
Don't you? I have
supplementary.
I have some advice for
Supplementary.
I have some advice for the minister. Perhaps he and his own staff, who are subject to criticism in this report, which tries hard not to criticize him, for having failed to communicate with his own officials and bureaucrats, might spend more time worrying about occupational health and safety in the province than getting someone on your own staff to work on calculations with regard to what the budget was 4 years ago.
That's right.
Now, I want specifically to ask the minister this question. Do you agree with the report which alleges that the labor movement and the media somehow are to blame for the problems you face? That has nothing to do with what happened before you took office. It has to do with a statement that's been made, and we are asking the self-styled Minister for Labor to tell us whether he agrees with those statements.
Minister?
Do you or don't you?
Mr. Speaker, those are the statements of an individual who has taken a look at the management of the division and who has delivered of himself his opinion. Mr. Speaker, that's his opinion. I'm more concerned, and indeed in my statement I commented on the recommendations that he makes in the policy area. in terms of practice and organization. I don't know what prompted Mr. McKenzie to make those comments. I didn't ask them about them. I certainly read them and took note of them. They're not the first time I've heard those comments made by individuals. But Mr. Speaker, if I can reiterate in terms of blame, the Leader of the Opposition and the former Treasurer for this province ought to know where the blame is for the fact that when we took office, we had seen the number of construction inspectorate diminished to 66. The blame lies across the aisle on that side. The fact of the matter is, and Mr. Speaker, the member for Brantford asked me what we've done about it. The fact of the matter is, the construction inspectorate is back up to just under 90 and will continue to grow at as quickly as we can, hire that inspectorate, and as quickly as we can properly get them trained.
Final supplementary.
Many inspectors as you had in 81, Bill.
Well, let's kind of deal with this, because this is a report which, as has been described by our colleagues in the NDP, is a whitewash, if ever there was one that attempts to blame the media and the labor movement, indeed anyone, except somehow the minister, who ultimately has the responsibility, whether he likes it or not, for occupational health safety in this province. And the most condemning thing is written on page 185 and 186. It doesn't talk about what happened in 1981 or 83 or 84. It says that this minister has failed to provide leadership. It says that you have not given direction through the ministry. It says that you have failed to send clear messages or support your own people. And unbelievably, after 2 years in office, it recommends the bold step that the Minister of Labour visit the field offices. Now, my simple question to the minister is this. Given the condemning nature of those recommendations with regard to your year and a half in office, and given the fact that both you and your deputy are appointees of the Premier of the province, and given the fact you've had a year and a half to clean up this mess and bring back the inspection level to the 1981 level, will you serve the injured workers of this province and the workers who are not yet injured properly by agreeing now with the NDP suggestion that you and, yes, your deputy resign now and let's start over?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to tell the Leader of the Opposition that we now have redressed. We now have, Mr. Speaker, redressed the levels of inspectors virtually to the 1980 levels. We have undone the foolishness that your government and you as Treasurer, sir, were responsible for. And that's where the responsibility lies. And while we've been doing it, Mr. Speaker, we have virtually doubled the number of lawyers in our legal branch. We've doubled the number of lawyers. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've doubled the number of lawyers from the days when the member for Brantford was the parliamentary assistant for the Minister of Labour, when nothing was happening. Mr. Speaker, we've added over 30 people in the occupational health branch. In short, Mr. Speaker, as I said in my statement, we've added approximately 100 people to the division. We've added enormous new resources and will continue to add.
New question. Leader of the Opposition, new question.
Does the Attorney General know you've got more lawyers and fewer successful prosecutions? That's your record. That's your record. I have a question.
To which minister?
I have a question for the Premier. I have and he's embarrassed by what's happened over there in his former job since he left, I will tell you that.
Question.
And he notices whenever the Attorney General's in trouble, he invokes Mr. McMurtry's name, but it won't help you. I have a question to the Premier, Mr. Speaker. The Premier has been ruminating lately about the Auto Pact and fear over its being on the negotiating table. I wonder if the Premier could inform us today with regard to the termination provisions in the Auto Pact itself. What are they?
Premier?
I believe it's a year's notice.
Supplementary?
You aren't sure, or else you would have spoke more loudly, as we've come to learn here. Well, my supplementary question for the Premier is this. Given the fact that that Canada is running a huge surplus under the Auto Pact provision, given the fact that the Americans can at any time give 1 year notice of their intention to terminate the Auto Pact, with or without free trade discussions, and given the fact that your government so ignored the softwood lumber problem that you did nothing about it until the decision was made, could you tell us specifically what you and your ministers are doing to ensure that the Americans from Washington do not give that 1 year notice under the Auto Pact?
Premier?
Well, I find your questions most strange, I must say, but let me do the best I can with a very strange question. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member will be aware that over the life of the Auto Pact, I believe about 22 years, it's involved, and I could be wrong on the figures, around $60 billion or so, and it is netted out over the years. Yes, some years Canada wins, some years the United States wins, but on balance, it's netted well. It's been called by many people, including the chairman of General Motors, one of the greatest trade instruments ever devised, certainly in North America. And as you know, the honourable member will know of the importance of that document to the province of Ontario and indeed to the rest of Canada. Now, this is a point that's been made on many, many occasions by me, by my colleagues, to the Prime Minister, a close associate of yours, and I hope that you will make the very same point to the Prime Minister, to Ms. Carney, who's responsible for these matters now. It is one of my concerns, obviously, is that this matter may come up during the so-called free trade discussions, whatever they are, that the federal government is having, and they may want to get it on the table, and I think that invites a look at the thing that could be very harmful to Ontario and to Canada. And so I am saying to the Prime Minister, to Ms. Carney, and anyone else who will listen there, that don't touch the Auto Pact. Leave it as it is. It has worked well. It has allowed the industry to put investments in place around it. It's something that everyone understands very well, and I don't think there's any merit at all in touching the situation.
Final supplementary?
Every Canadian agrees with that position. And in fact, Premier, no Canadian I know of is advocating anything but leaving it alone. The issue has nothing to do with whether you are encouraging the Prime Minister,
We know what you're up to.
whether you are encouraging the Prime Minister or anyone else to leave the Auto Pact alone. Every Canadian agrees with leaving the Auto Pact alone. The issue is, just like softwood lumber, that the Americans are angry over certain practices and may, in fact, give the 1 year notice that they have always had the right to give and terminate the Auto Pact. Now, just as on softwood lumber, your government did nothing to go to Washington to make sure that action wasn't taken. Similarly, on this issue, you also are doing nothing to make sure action isn't taken. My final supplementary to the Premier is this. We know of your earlier dedication to no walls and no barriers. I wonder if you might make public to us and to everyone else the now famous David Barrows leaked document on this whole issue. Will you make that public?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, as you know, that analysis by one particular public official was made public, and I must say I'm not happy about that situation. It's certainly not something I was aware of or encouraged. The answer is no. It's one more. No, I won't. I answered your question. The reason is this. I don't think it's helpful to circulate all of these opinions that various people have. It's only part of the greater package, an enormous amount of correspondence on this one particular subject. Well, my honourable friend will be aware, it's part of a party that never would bring in freedom of information legislation, and I appreciate your recent conversion to our point of view in that regard. But I don't think it was ever the intention of freedom of information in legislation to include private correspondence, to include advice to cabinet or interdepartmental memos in that regard. So I don't think it's particularly helpful. I regret when these things are leaked. They are from time to time. Far too many around here for my taste. But there you have it. And I don't think it's constructive to debate. But if you want to ask any questions on the subject, we're very happy to answer.
New question?
Well,
The member for York South.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Labour. Mr. Speaker, even in this most abject of whitewashes, without any basic legal protection for the people that are making the asking for an investigation, without the rights to cross-examine, without the right to call witnesses, without the right to subpoena evidence, without the right to do any of those things, even given that, this report states, Mr. Speaker, that in Valinite Modco, in Domtar, in de Havilland, in Westinghouse, in Mack Trucks, in American Can, in Fleet Industries, and Robert Hunt, we concluded that the ministry did not take sufficient measures to ensure that levels of toxic substances were reduced within an acceptable period of time. What makes some of these cases even more troubling is that no substantial improvements to conditions at the various plants appear to have been achieved until concerns were raised in the news media and in the legislature. My question for the minister, Mr. Speaker, is given the importance of that statement and some of the evidence which I'm going to be asking the minister about, why did he choose to side with Mr. McKenzie in the very cheap statements that he made with respect to those who raised these allegations? And in particular, why did he choose to say this, that the challenge of government is a far more weighty and worthy challenge than that of pulling things apart by unjust accusation, when the report itself states that were it not for accusations made by people like my colleague from Sudbury, this evidence would never have been brought to light and people would never have been helped by the actions of government itself.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's the honourable member's interpretation that as to who I was making those comments about, that's his interpretation. I can only say, Mr. Speaker, if you could get the member of the third party, who gives out cheap shots so quickly but doesn't like when somebody actually responds to him, to let me answer the question. Mr. Speaker.
Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Order. Will the member for Sudbury East contain himself? Order. Order. Minister, response?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I was in Sudbury last week trying to work with my friend, the member for Sudbury East, and it was also so successful then. And here we are back in the House. And, well, Mr. Speaker, let me suggest to the leader of the third party that there's no doubt as I read the details, the specific case details of the Laskin cases, indeed some of which have occurred after I took office, or at least a part of them, that a number of the cases were very troubling. But I suggest to my friend, and I acknowledge that a number of these cases were resolved only after the kind of activity that he describes, input in the legislature and the media. I certainly acknowledge that quickly. I would also want to point out to my friend that not in all cases, but certainly in some of them, and I think he would want to acknowledge this, those cases are several years old. And that indeed, if I could use Valinite Modco, because I'm very familiar with it, when the government took office and the employer missed a compliance deadline 8 days later, he was given a stop work order. When the employer said he could not meet a compliance deadline at the end of October, we indicated that if he did not meet the compliance deadline, that there would be a stop work order. In both cases, having had that threat of tough action, in both cases, the employer met the deadline.
Supplementary.
I want to just relate to the minister, because I think that he has in his statement given credence to a very sleazy accusation made by the authors of this report. He himself has made a similar sleazy accusation in saying that there have been unjust accusations without naming any of the individuals involved who've made these unjust accusations, or indeed in telling us what they are. And if the minister thinks he's going to get away with that kind of intimidation in this legislature with respect to any member of this party, he is sadly mistaken, and he will rue the day that he made the kind of statement that he made in this House today. I can tell the minister that.
Question.
With respect to American Can, Mr. Speaker, I wonder if the minister can explain why it is. With respect to one particular company, we're not simply dealing with a company, Mr. Speaker, we're dealing with individual workers who have suffered irreparable and irreversible neurological damage. I wonder if the minister can explain why it is that in the report no reference is made to those individuals when their names were well known and their cases were well documented. If he can explain why no reference is made to those individuals, and why, in fact, there is in this entire report no sense, not of individual companies, but of individual people whose lives are put at risk every day because of the neglect of this government and the neglect of this minister with respect to occupational health and safety.
Mr. Speaker, I think Mr. Laskin indicated right at the outset, and the honourable gentleman may disagree, but I don't, that other than those places where it would be useful and appropriate to name names, that includes, by the way, Mr. Speaker, members of the legislature, against whom a number of comments are made, that he would not do so. And I note, as I quickly glanced at American Can, he did describe one of the workers, and I'm certainly aware of the names, that is referred to by the leader of the third party. Mr. Speaker, I suppose, and you would have to ask Mr. Laskin, the leader would have to ask Mr. Laskin that question, perhaps he might want to sometime in casual conversation, that, Mr. Speaker, I guess Mr. Laskin decided on a fairly dispassionate description of the cases as he found them and his conclusions on them. But let there be no mistake. Let there be no mistake about the willingness and the determination of this government, this minister and this government, to turn Ontario's health and safety into the finest jurisdiction in all of North America. Now, we've made a start. There's a long way to go. But let me be equally clear, Mr. Speaker. I think that both reports make it very clear that we're on the right track, and I'm determined to see the matter through to a successful conclusion.
Final supplementary.
Speaker, I don't know how the minister could say the report says you're on the right track. There isn't a person in Ontario who knows what the hell track you're on. What I'd like to ask the minister by way of final supplementary is, can you tell us, you want to talk about your track, we haven't seen any legislation dealing with the major issues involved in this report. I'd like to ask the minister, since the report, despite the fact that it is a whitewash, despite the fact that it is an inquiry which gave no rights at all to those people who had questions to raise with respect to cross-examination of evidence, with respect to challenge to answers made to certain questions, it was had the results in the words of the had the benefit in the words of the report of the advantages of candor, informality, and expedition. Advantages to those in management and to those in the ministry, but not advantages to those who are concerned about health and safety with respect to the future of the province. I'd like to ask the minister, can he tell us why in his statement today he made absolutely no reference to new legislation with respect to occupational health and safety, to a new response and reorganization of his ministry which is clearly called for, and why in fact he's not prepared to take responsibility for the neglect which even in this document is documented in several cases which we have raised in this legislature.
Well, sometimes, Mr. Speaker, I wonder if some people would have been just as happy if we had some kind of a body count of misconduct. I guess that isn't the way I view life. I'm quite frankly, on a personal basis, I'm delighted and happy that no individual, Mr. Speaker, has been found guilty of misconduct and of resolute reluctance to prosecute. I know, Mr. Speaker, that there are certain areas of real serious neglect. I was aware, have been for months, that we missed a couple of prosecution dates. That's inexcusable to me. But Mr. Speaker, I just want to say Mr. Laskin says, and I just think it's important to read into the record, because I know the honourable gentleman and I have a disagreement. He says that Mr. Laskin says, and I quote, they argued that where misconduct is the issue, a public inquiry with the right of cross-examination for all interested parties better ensures a full airing of all the pertinent facts. As against the position, he says, it may be fairly argued that the review process that was established had the advantages of candor, informality, and expedition. Indeed, we are satisfied, he concludes, that several persons we questioned would not have spoken to us under the glare of a public hearing. And there it is, Mr. Speaker, the one view on the one side, the other view on the other. Mr. Speaker, obviously there are two choices to make, and we made the choice that we did.
Order. New question. The member for York South.
Speaker, I suspect the minister is embarrassing even to his own colleagues. The question that I have to ask is to the Premier about the Auto Pact. Mr. Speaker, we've now had the advantage of a published memo in the Montreal Gazette, as well as the documents which we released in November and which the Premier commented on back in November. I wonder if the Premier can tell us that is it the position of the Government of Ontario that, to quote the words of Mr. Barrow's memorandum, Mr. Reisman and the Tories are out of control and apparently willing to scrap the Auto Pact. Is that the position of the Government of Ontario?
Premier?
That particular memo was a result, a report back to his superiors by one particular official in the ministry. I guess I wouldn't go that far at the moment. As you know, we garner information from a variety of sources, and one is this particular monitoring very closely what's happening at the official level. As you know as well, officials talk to officials, and the view of the government, the federal government, may not necessarily be the view of some official who is working on a particular project at some particular time. I would not go that far, but I want you to know that I am sufficiently worried about these matters and others, and that I have shared my view with you here in the House, with the Prime Minister, with the Minister, and anyone else who will listen. These are matters upon which not just this government, but I suspect every member of this House feels very, very strongly.
Supplementary?
Well, I think we all feel strongly about it, Mr. Speaker, but what we are still in the dark about is after a year and a half of your being in government is what your position is once it is clear that it's on the table. We've been saying for that year and a half period and been raising time and again that in fact it is on the table, and it's obvious that it's on the table. I'd like to ask the Premier, given the memorandum from Mr. Barrows, given the internal cabinet document which we released in November, and given my understanding today that our Federal Research Office has an internal memorandum from GM which states that GM has heard that the federal government has privately told Hyundai and Toyota that the Auto Pact will be dead within 5 years. Given those three footprints in the sand, if you like, that tell us clearly what the position of the federal government is, what is your position? What are you now going to do in order to change that whole thrust of the federal discussion with respect to free trade? Just what are you going to do?
The honourable member will be aware that this is an initiative that's undertaken by the federal government, not by me. If you had asked me to conduct these discussions, if I had conducted them in the first place, I would have conducted them in very different ways than has been going on there at the present time. It's no particular problem. There's no particular surprise to my honourable friend that there are some very serious errors, some very serious differences of opinion, Mr. Speaker, between the federal government and this government on a number of the key issues of the day. We put those views through very forcefully. What will happen in the future, no one can tell. Well, that's if you could tell your honourable friends here to keep the noise down a little bit, then perhaps we could have a discussion in the House. But we're watching what's happening, and at some point in the future, we'll have an opportunity, I think, to either pass judgment on what they're doing.
Final supplementary, the member for Hamilton East. Order.
Well, Mr. Premier, it's pretty obvious that it would be difficult for anybody to have a clear view of just exactly where this provincial government is going based on the select committee hearings and report. Because most of the time, your members in that committee were voting with the Tories on this issue. We tried to make it more specific in terms of what can't happen and of the difficulty in proceeding with these free trade talks. Now, it's obvious that the talks are being taken on and carried on in an atmosphere of lies and deceit. It's very clear that that's what's happening. We are not being told the truth. We are being told, even all members of that committee agreed that the Auto Pact could not be on the table. It's clearly obvious that it now is on the table. Given that kind of deceit in these talks, and given the danger to this province of any doing away with the Auto Pact, are you not now prepared to use the clout that Ontario has to end this bloody charade?
Speaker.
Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know what you're suggesting in that regard. Perhaps you're suggesting that Ontario say they're against discussing the Auto Pact. We've said that at least 100 times. I'm not in a position to end the talks. The talks can go on with or without us. You know that as well as I do. Just like I say to my honourable friend, if you'll listen for a moment, I wasn't in a position to end the discussions on the softwood lumber. Mr. Mulrooney takes advice from the people he trusts, perhaps the leader of the opposition, and he carries on and makes these judgments in that regard. As you understand this federal system, each of us have certain powers at certain times. And I say to my honourable friend, we give the federal government the best advice we can. They listen to you, they listen to our friends opposite, and then they make their own conclusions in that regard. But if you're asking me to stand in this House and to defend the federal government, I can tell you, my honourable friend, I'm not prepared to do that.
New question, the member for York. Order. Order. New question, the member for York Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Community and Social Services. As the Minister will have read in today's papers, a 54-year-old man was found frozen to death in an abandoned building yesterday morning. The Minister has been warned repeatedly that there would be deaths this winter unless action was taken to solve the chronic problems of the province's homeless. The Minister has chosen to ignore the warnings given by myself. The Minister has chosen to ignore the warnings that came out of the Drina Joubert inquest. Did the Minister refuse to do anything because he didn't believe the warnings, or is it because he is willing to accept these deaths as an inevitable part of urban life?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me begin by saying neither of the above. I quite recognize not only the warnings from my honourable colleague opposite, but from many others across the province, that the problem, the crisis that he has described, in fact exists. However, in this particular situation, the gentleman that he refers to has used the hostel system in this city on a number of occasions. The hostel that he used most frequently was just around the corner from where he was found, and there were empty spaces in it that night. This was known to him. He chose not to take advantage of it.
Supplementary.
Now, Mr. Speaker, the problem is deeper than the Minister would have us assume. The Minister has done nothing to correct the acute shortage of hostel spaces in Toronto. The Minister has done nothing to provide affordable homes to the more than 12,000 people that are homeless. And as a result, police right now have nowhere to take these people, leaving them on the streets to die. The police are even expecting more deaths this winter. Tonight, the temperature will be below freezing once again.
And the supplementary is?
Mr. Minister, can you tell us where these people should be taken tonight, or will we read about another death tomorrow?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the information that the honourable member shares with the House is not completely accurate. There is approximately 300 additional hostel spaces in Metro alone, mostly in the City of Toronto, over the winter months. There is a clear additional, above and beyond last year, 193 hostel spaces in the Metro area, mostly in the City of Toronto, for this particular winter. There's also additional money given to the Metro area, as across the whole province, for winter emergency programs. Now, that's for the emergency shelter. That's there. There are available hostel spaces in this community, particularly in this community, every single night. Now, the second point I would make with response to his observations is that my honourable colleague, the Minister of Housing, has last year announced an additional 6,700 units, and very recently, just the last couple of months, an additional above and beyond that, 3,000 units. They're in the process of being put in place. The honourable member, with his background, knows as well as I do, knows as well as my honourable colleague, the Minister of Housing, does, that there is a time lag between those announcements and those new spaces being made available. And in addition to those, there have been spaces made available under the Renterprise program and under a number of other renter programs. The whole intent of it is to accept the premise, which the honourable member himself has made, is that some of the people who are using the hostels on a regular basis should be provided with ongoing housing. We accept that.
New question.
That's the role of my colleague.
Order.
He is fulfilling his role.
Order.
I am fulfilling my role.
New question. The member for Sudbury East.
I have a question of the Minister of Labour. Since the provincial auditor was highly critical of your ministry and its failure to respond to problems, and since this report says they call for an expanded inspectorate, acting not as monitors, mediators, and problem solvers, but as policemen, unfortunately, there's evidence that members of this group have another agenda and are using occupational health and safety to achieve their objectives. Are you suggesting, or do you agree with Mackenzie, that the provincial auditor is part of that hidden agenda? And are you prepared to tell us what the hidden agenda is, since you so warmly endorsed this report? Would you tell us what that hidden agenda is?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's probably as well hidden to me as it is to the honourable member. I think, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman mistakes. Perhaps he wasn't here for the beginning of my statement, but mistakes what he was hearing. I indicated in my statement that in terms of Mr. Mackenzie's review, I find that in the suggestions of decentralization, various levels of inspectorate, of greatly improved training, objectives that I know that my honourable friend endorses, that I find much to commend itself in those suggestions. I don't know what Mr. Mackenzie suggests when he talks of a hidden agenda. I do know, Mr. Speaker, that of the directions that this government wishes to follow. We want to follow a direction in which the internal responsibility system, as the minister and as I know my honourable friend understand it, works and works effectively in places like Algoma, which is used as a case study where the Steelworkers Union and the management of Algoma Steel work closely together to make the health and safety system work. And where it doesn't work, Mr. Speaker, I believe that the government has to be in a position, has to have the capabilities, has to have the systems in place to move in quickly to, first of all, fix the problem, and secondly, make sure that the IRS system will work in the future.
Supplementary.
Supplementary, since Mackenzie, I think, indicates that, but the hidden agenda is control of the production process, which I find offensive that he would even suggest. But let me ask a supplementary on the same page, because that puts no, that's what Mackenzie says. Mackenzie says the workers want control of the workplace, and that's the hidden agenda.
Nice idea.
I wish they'd say it.
What a horrible
but in this report,
Supplementary.
My goodness.
since the accident rates went up 24% last year, accident rates in the province went up 24% one year, 24% the year before. We're now up to probably 50% increase in the last 2 or 3 years. Could the minister tell me, does he believe the following statement by Mr. Mackenzie? The management community has been essentially passive in the public debate, believing that there is a no-win situation. Short of achieving a perfect accident and health record, they perceive that they will always be in a defensive position and therefore vulnerable. And isn't Mackenzie once again saying that management is right and the workers, the people who are getting hurt, are irresponsible and they must be quiet, otherwise they will be condemned? I mean, who has created this bloody problem if it isn't management, which won't accept Bill 70?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think, again, I don't know what Mr. Mackenzie is saying. I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, that probably what Mr. Mackenzie is speaking about, and I'll go back to that example at Algoma. Mr. Mackenzie is describing a situation where management has not been part of a dynamic in the workplace, which will lead to better health and safety, which ultimately, Mr. Speaker, I think the honourable gentleman and I both wish. I believe, and if the member for Algoma will let me continue, that is exactly what he's speaking. Mr. Speaker, while I'm on my feet, in terms of the preamble, and I regret that I continue to hear the kind of statistics from over on that side that can almost be described as disinformation. The fact of the matter is that the number of accidents in 1986 rose by 3.6%. 3.6%, and that is much lower than the previous year, and lower than the year before that, and lower than the year before that. It's the lowest increase. They rose at a percentage which was about the percentage at which employment rose in the province, and a much lower percentage, Mr. Speaker, I might add, than in many other provinces in this jurisdiction.
New question. The member for Wellington South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Treasurer. My question, Mr. Speaker, specifically has two parts. The Treasurer will be aware, as are all the members of the House, about the absolutely ludicrous propositions that we're reading about in the press in regards to the federal government's proposed designation of Vancouver and Montreal as international banking centers and excluding Toronto, the heartland of such an entity in Canada. My question in two parts to the Treasurer is, one, can he give us his comments as to this proposal if indeed it becomes a reality, and secondly, what can Ontario and what will Ontario do if in fact this does become a reality?
Treasurer.
I'm surprised at the statement made by the spokespersons for the Government of Canada in this regard. Although it stems from the budget almost a year ago, no concrete action has been taken, and we're hoping that wiser heads in Ottawa will prevail and they will not proceed with it. The latest information, however, is that they intend to proceed with designation of centres other than Toronto. I agree with the honourable member who has asked the question that it is ludicrous, since this is the financial centre and will continue to be, we trust, for Canada, and it must be very misleading for people in other parts of the world who are participating in the financial work that is necessary to finance expanding industry and government, to find that the Government of Canada is establishing two other international centres. The government certainly takes this matter very seriously indeed, and we hope that there will not be a continuation of this announced initiative, but if there is, we are looking at alternatives which will keep Ontario and Toronto in the forefront of world competition in these financial matters.
New question. New question. The member for Lakeshore.
Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of the Environment. Last November, 18,000 gallons of diesel fuel leaked from tanks owned by the National Research Council into a swamp adjacent to the Ottawa Airport.
The Minister of Labour.
Can the Minister explain, Mr. Speaker, why there was no public indication of this spill and it only came to attention when an oil-soaked beaver was found in the swamp?
Gee.
Is it now the Minister's policy that he only announces the good news and leaves it to the beavers to tell us when something bad has happened?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I can't believe that the member even believes that. I think she was being amusing in this case, and from that statement point of view, I'll be happy to investigate this particular matter, which she has appropriately drawn to my attention. I can tell the member that it seems that I spend a good deal of my time revealing the bad news which exists in terms of the challenges which face us in the environment, and I certainly reveal good and bad news when it comes to my attention, and I'll be happy to investigate the matter that the member's brought to my attention.
Supplementary, the member for Ottawa Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Minister at the same time as he's looking into the way we receive news on environmental matters in Ottawa, to look into the question of the operation of that ministry office, and to find out why, for example, the director of that office said on Sunday they should have called, the feds should have called him to let him know about what was happening, and he said, that's a hell of a lot of oil, he said. Now, in fact, his office had been called by the feds, apparently, but he didn't know about it. Why is the same office telling people that it's a question of the decision of the regional municipality what goes into the trail site dump, when there are 1,200 cans of Navro waste that are looking for disposal down there that the ministry hasn't been able to handle? Who's running that office and what's happening down there?
The situation that would exist in relationship to what shall go into a landfill site, for instance, is the following. While the regional municipality does operate the landfill site, there will be a consultation from time to time with the Ministry of the Environment to determine whether any particular substance would meet Regulation 309, which deals with substances and categorizes the substances, whether they're, for instance, contained as part of soil, whether it's a liquid being poured straight, or what kind of substance and what the ingredients are within a particular pile of stuff going into a particular landfill. So there would be that kind of consultation. But as I indicated to the member for Lakeshore, I'll be pleased to investigate this matter. Obviously, you would not have raised it in the House without some degree of concern, and I'll certainly look into the matter to see that everything was appropriately done, and if it isn't done, we'll make the appropriate changes.
Member for Kent Elgin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question to the Minister of the Environment. The people of southwestern Ontario who suffer crop damage and building damage and damage to their health from acid rain, and also the people of northeastern Ontario who suffer lake and forest and health damages, were appalled to learn of the Reagan budget omitted any reference to a acid rain abatement program, and they were outraged by the announcement of a abatement program between Mexico and the United States. What can we do, and what can you do to switch channels from the doodling duo singing Irish Eyes Are Crying to that old Gene Kelly favorite, Singing in the Acid Rain?
Minister?
I won't. The member for Brantford, Mr. Speaker, has requested that I sing. I won't acquiesce to that particular request, but I remind the member for Kent Elgin that in March of last year, when the Prime Minister and the President concluded their remarks, and there were some who were hailing the agreement that was come to between the two countries, at least between the two heads of state, as being a good agreement as far as acid rain was concerned, that we in Ontario were, to say the very least, restrained in our enthusiasm. And one of the reasons is that we believe that you must see an actual acid rain reduction program with a timetable, with specific reductions contained in it, with a specific schedule, before we really have a positive impact on Ontario and on Canada in terms of the emissions coming over here. I have consulted on many occasions with the federal minister. I urge the federal government to press the case with Washington, perhaps in a less conciliatory fashion than was the case last year, because I think, in fairness to them, even the federal government are concerned now that the kind of agreement that they were able to come to with the Americans last year really hasn't been worth much, because the President hasn't been able to put the money in the budget, or prepared to do so.
Supplementary? No. New question, the member for York Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations. On December 17th, the Minister made some revisions to the new home warranty plan. Why didn't the Minister at that time make a change to protect the consumer immediately after the offer was signed, rather than the way it is now when they take possession that the new home warranty program goes into effect? Why didn't you make that change now?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the member will know that what we try to do is address a problem that has been ongoing. That problem is one that has been addressed and recognized by both the industry and by my ministry. What we did was on the basis of our best advice and the determination of what we thought was best for the consumer, in keeping with the needs and the problems that the builders are facing.
Supplementary?
What you've seen happen is the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations has forgotten about the consumer. What you've done is put the good housekeeping seal of approval on a builder's solution to a builder's problem. Right now, there is no one to protect the new home buyer when they buy the house, to arbitrate and resolve solutions that happen between the time they buy and the time they take possession. Who is there going to be in this province, in your government, to protect the consumer?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the member is mistaken. There is absolutely built in the good housekeeping seal, or whatever you want to call it, the approval, is not being done by the builders, it's being done by the new home warranty program. The new home warranty program is there to do exactly that. As you know, in the Ryan Homes situation, they stepped in and they did the job.
Order.
Now, the new home warranty program.
Order. Would the honourable member take his seat? Any further response? New question. The member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question for the Premier about the Centres of Excellence program that was announced on the last day the House sat back in December. The call for proposals issued by the Premier's Council clearly stipulated that these research centres will go to consortium of universities and private sector based on the strength of the sponsors' current research programs which must be internationally recognized. Areas like Northern Ontario, without a strong research and technology base, do not qualify under the stated criteria. I'd like to ask the Premier if he will go back to his council and ask them to redraft the criteria so that such technology centres will in fact go to the areas with the greatest need and the greatest opportunity to create the jobs we all want to see in this province.
Premier?
First of all, you're wrong on several counts. Northern Ontario is not excluded. We have a number of programs designed to meet some of the needs of Northern Ontario. We're doing that, and the Centres of Excellence is one that could possibly qualify. But in this program, we are aiming at building world-class critical masses of research capacity. And it's not a regional development program. It's looking at building on the strengths that we have. Now, I'm with my friend that I believe that we have a number of those strengths in Northern Ontario. And indeed, I am told a number of consortiums involving northern universities are competing. I don't know why you continue to sell the North short.
Supplementary?
Mr. Speaker, the Premier certainly must recognize that this province has never established a research university in Northern Ontario. The universities in the North are directed at undergraduate programs that do not have graduate programs of the sophistication available at the universities in Southern Ontario. At the same time, the private sector has never established major research operations in Northern Ontario. Probably the most significant one is INCOS, which has always been located in Sheridan Park in metropolitan Toronto. Will the Premier look at the criteria that he's established in his call for proposals and go back and ensure that, in fact, what is promoted is not the areas which currently have the greatest research strength, but is the areas that don't have research strength and need research in order to develop the technological base to create the jobs we need. And Northern Ontario certainly does not have the research base that we want up there, and if you base it on need, which is excluded completely as a criteria, the opportunity would be completely different.
Speaker, to my honourable friend, I say respectfully, you're wrong. You'll notice the substantial number of initiatives this government has undertaken, and two were specifically to build Sudbury into a centre of world-class area of mining and mining research. And look at the moves that have gone on there with Laurentian University, look at the moves that have gone on with the Ontario Geological Survey and others to build that critical mass there. And it is going exactly that direction. We did it several months ago. I'm surprised my honourable friend was not aware of it. Secondly, you'll be aware of new funding that's gone into Lakehead University in the forestry area, new links that have been established with the University of Toronto, new relationships with the industry as well, to build in Thunder Bay a world-class centre of forestry expertise and research associated with that university. So I say to my honourable friend, they are not excluded. Exactly the kind of things you want to see happen are happening. The communities are delighted, and I'm surprised my honourable friend wasn't aware of those initiatives that now are several months old.
New question. The member for Yorkview.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Agriculture. Minister, the question relates to the registration of dairy cows by name as a requirement of the Ontario Dairy Herd Improvement Corporation. Mr. Speaker, it has come to my attention that one client has permitted to have recorded the name of nigger in reference to a heifer in his herd. Mr. Speaker, in this province we have made great strides in eradicating overt forms of racial discrimination. However, the use of such racially derogatory names to describe cattle is blatantly offensive. Is the minister prepared to communicate this government's policies governing discrimination to the Ontario Dairy Herd Improvement Corporation to ensure their compliance?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's my understanding that the Ontario Dairy Herd Improvement Corporation, a private concern commonly known as ODHIC, has been made aware of this situation, and I trust, Mr. Speaker, that the corporation will deal with that matter in a most appropriate manner.
New question. The member for Stormont, Dundas, Glengarry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Minister will know that the Farm Property Tax Rebate Program is the largest assistance program this government provides to farmers, and that applications are normally mailed in September. Why, as of last Friday, January 9th, some forms were still not mailed according to your ministry? And will you, as the minister, provide special funding to those municipalities who are experiencing cash flow problems because farmers have not been able to pay their entire taxes thanks to the bungling in your ministry?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I must apologize to the honourable member and to a great number of farmers in this province due to a human error, not only in my ministry, but at government services. I can assure you, and the House that every application has now been mailed, as of today. They're all in the mail, and we received the cooperation of the post office here in Toronto to make sure that these applications are all in the mail. So I must apologize to you, to this House, and to the farmers for a human error.
New supplementary, the member for Dufferin.
I find this a little difficult to understand. This was raised in the House. This issue was raised in the House on November 24th and again on December the 8th. You told your own Minister of Agriculture, as stated in the Hansard for the estimates of agriculture, that all of the applications were mailed on December the 3rd. Your own staff were telling members here that all the mailing was done by December 15th. And then, as of last week, you were telling our offices that there were still bags of applications still to be mailed. Now, why have you been so totally inept in dealing with this problem?
It's on page 78. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is quite right. I was told. Now, if you want to keep your mouth shut and listen, you'll get an answer. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is quite right. I was instructed that all applications had been mailed, but now if my honourable member wants to ask the Minister of Government Services where the original mistake was made, then you will believe that my original answer, sir, was the right one.
New question. New question, the member for Essex North.
Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Agriculture and Food. I think the Minister will agree that the federal government's $1 billion grain deficiency payment is really not enough to cover the losses experienced by the Canadian farmers because of, as a result of the U.S. and European Economic Community subsidies that they pay to their farmers. The Ontario Soybean Growers Association, though, feel that in order to meet the costs, their costs, they would need about $20 million more in deficiency payments for their commodities. I'm going to ask the Minister if he feels that the 19 cents a bushel that the soybean growers in Ontario are receiving is sufficient amount to compensate for the farmers for the hurt caused by the international fall in grain prices. And if so, is the Minister
prepared to pick up the need and supply deficiency payments that will cover the cost where the soybean growers have not received enough to meet their costs
Minister,
because of the
order.
falling
Order.
prices of grain.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it was the opinion of the federal government and the Federal Minister of Agriculture and Food that the Food Security Act did not cause injury to the soybean growers that it did to the grain growers throughout the country, and that's the reason that the subsidy amounted to 19 cents a bushel for soybeans as compared to 34 cents a bushel for corn. Now, I'm certainly prepared to put more pressure on the federal government if indeed the soybean growers feel that that is not adequate, that they have been injured to a far greater extent than the federal government believes they have. But it is a federal government responsibility, and we're a little sick on this side of the House of having the federal government renege on what is their responsibility and throwing the ball into the court of the provinces. We're going to see that the federal government lives up to its responsibilities.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. That completes the allotted time for question period.